session is part of WPS's focus on resumes this semester, and we are partnering with the UCCS Career Center to provide students with opportunities to work directly with Career Center counselors on their resumes. That will be from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. on November 3rd, and we'll provide more information on how to sign up at the end of the evening. But first, we're going to talk to professional women with powerful resumes. So we know that the resume is a predominant method for job seekers to promote their experience and skills. But scholars have found evidence of bias by employers when reading resumes. So for example, one study showed that if a woman violated gender norms and had experience on her resume that was considered, assertive and aggressive and forceful and independent and decisive, the things that we consider manly, men would rank those resumes lower. That's a problem. Another study found that primary caregivers of children and or elderly parents are less likely to be hired. And if they're hired, they're offered lower salaries when they're hired, and then they're evaluated more poorly on the job. And one last thing I wanted to tell you about was a study that came out of Harvard Business School. They found that when Black and Asian individuals, quote unquote, whitened their resumes by scrubbing them for all racial clues, they were more likely to get callbacks for interviews based on that. So there are a lot of known issues, and we're going to try to provide some guidance through these problems. So tonight's presentation is in two parts. First, we're going to have a panel of 4 talented women discuss their personal experiences in the working world and provide some guidance for women when looking for jobs. Second, we will welcome a speaker from the UCCS Career Center, Rui Escobedo, to give us advice about the nuts and bolts of resume writing. So I'd like to introduce our panel. First, we're going to hear from Courtney Stewart, and she is a UCCS student working towards a dual master in public administration and sociology with a strength in diversity. Meanwhile, serving as the Food and Safety Warrant Officer in the Army Reserve and as a civilian. She's also a federal employee for the U.S. Air Force, serving as a 4-year International Cadet Coordinator at the U.S. Air Force Academy. Second, we'll hear from the Honorable Judge Shannon Gerhart. Judge Gerhart has degrees from University of Northern Iowa and the University of Oklahoma. She was appointed to the county court bench for Colorado's 4th Judicial District in 2017 by Governor Hickenlooper. She presides over both criminal and civil cases in El Paso County and Teller County, I believe. I'm new to Colorado, so I apologize. She came to the bench after a distinguished career in the district's attorney's office, working as a county court DA, juvenile court DA, and the chief deputy DA, to mention only a few of the positions she held there. We also welcome Nanette Brady Mueller, who is retired from the U.S. Army, where she was a strategic planner and a program manager, and now continues as a servant leader of volunteering thousands of hours to the veteran community, focusing on career transition, spouse employment, and national and state legislative issues that are helpful to our military veterans and their families. And 9 years ago, she created Prep Connect 360, which is a week-long workshop that helps the veteran community transition from uniform to civilian success. And in 2020, she was selected as the El Paso County, Colorado Veteran of the Year. And last but not least, we have Tammy Bloomfield, who is the Associate Division Counsel and Acting Chief Division Counsel for the FBI Los Angeles Field Office Legal Unit. And she has been in this position since 1998. Her responsibilities as Division Counsel include providing advice and counsel on legal, policy, and administrative matters affecting a wide range of employees, from the executives to the support staff. as well as providing legal and policy education to the Los Angeles field office. Prior to joining the Bureau, Ms. Bloomfield worked as an attorney at a large Los Angeles firm and as a federal judicial law clerk in the District of Nevada. Her degrees are from Binghamton University and Boston University. Well, welcome to you all. For the audience, we'll hear from each of our panelists for about 15 minutes, followed by 15 minutes of questions and answers, and then we'll turn our attention to Ms. Escobedo from the UCCS Career Center, and she'll speak for the remainder of the time, reserving some time for questions at the end. And also feel free to type in questions in the chat box as they come up. So I will hand it over to Courtney Stewart.
Good evening, everybody. I made a PowerPoint presentation in true Army fashion. It's kind of how we do things. Awesome. Can everybody see that? So before I start discussing the resume writing for female veterans, I wanted to share my Capstone project. I'm in the beginning stages of it. As a female military member, I'm very interested in retention rates of women in the Army. I believe before the DoD can fix the low retention rates, they must understand why women choose to separate early in their careers. Per the U.S. Government Accountability Office, in 2020, 14.4% of people in the Army are female, active duty side, and 17.9% are female reservist side. Additionally, there's a 28% more likelihood that women will not re-enlist into the Army compared to men. Before I can discuss women in the military, I want to briefly touch on just leadership in general. Women are disproportionately concentrated in lower level positions in roles of less authority than men. Debunked theory is women are less educated. As you can see in this slide, I mean, a lot of women earn their degrees, and a lot of the women on this panel, we all have schooling behind us. However, even with our educational background, women only make up 4.5% of the Fortune 500 CEOs. 20.2% occupy the Fortune 500 board seats. And politically, 19.6% hold seats in Congress, 21% hold seats at Senate, and 19.3% hold House of Representatives. So women are said to be less effective than men when supervising a higher portion of male subordinates, or when men are assessing a woman's leadership performance. However, multiple studies have proven that men and women are equally effective leaders when given the appropriate tools and opportunities. The Army is an example of a male-dominant organization with masculized positions. From the outside looking in, the Army looks good on paper. It looks like women and men are equal. However, this has taken decades. As you can see, prior to 1948, women received 0 benefits. We got no disability, no pension. If a female were to die while deployed, DoD did not pay to have their remains brought back to their family. After the war, women were displaced from jobs for the war-fighting men to come back and take over. In 1948, it's when it was official that women could serve in the military and we wouldn't lose our seats, right? However, only 2% of each branch in the military could be female. If a woman became pregnant while serving, she was automatically discharged. Women could not lead men at this time, and women could not serve in any sort of combat any sort of combat jobs. 1967, promotion restrictions were removed. 1975, pregnant women could stay in. The first female brigade commander was in 2007, and that person was in charge of roughly 3,000 to 5,000 personnel. The first female 4-star general, which is the highest you can be as an officer in the Army, was in 2008. 2013, women could officially serve in combat zones. 2015, women could join special operations such as your Ranger units. And then 2016, there's no more restrictions on women joining the military across all branches of service. So we can clearly see progression for female equality in the Army. However, why are more women not joining? And more importantly, why are women not staying in? The military invests a lot of money in all of the individuals that join. In my true millennial fashion, I took to social media platforms. I asked fellow military members in closed groups that I'm in. I specifically asked, from your experience, what is directly affecting retention rates in the Army? And pretty much all the women were saying the Army's concept of one size fits all approach. So on paper, men and women are equal. Therefore, we have unisex uniforms, AKA male uniforms. We have a gender neutral fitness test, which is called the ACFT, or Army Combat Fitness Test. As of May 21, it hasn't been fully implemented yet. We're just in the trial period. But as of May this year, we're at 44% failure rate for women, 7% failure rate for men. Healthcare issues, women are treated, our health is treated the same as men. However, women in the military, we have higher infertility rates. We have issues with fibromyalgia. We have complex PTSD from combat and sexual trauma. We have musculoskeletal injuries. These are things that men are not experiencing across the board like women, but yet we're treated the same as our male counterparts. Females in the military lack appropriate mentors. Male mentors provide women with less training opportunities. One of the reasons is, in the Army, we say perception is reality, right? So you're not going to get that one-on-one mentorship when you have a man and a woman mentor, like you would a male and a male, due to fraternization issues, various rumors, and people trying to all protect their careers, right? Additionally, women they traditionally have the most parental responsibilities. So when a woman is pregnant, their male counterparts at times view them as weak and frail. They'll miss on various training opportunities that a man can still obtain and a woman cannot, because we're, quote unquote, disabled in that time, in that 9-month time frame, right? Women, when you are a mother, sometimes we're viewed as absent parents, and we carry that guilt with us. Women have less accessibility to career progression schools because we tend to make various career sacrifices and not take schools as soon as they become open, because we have a family obligation that we want to take care of. And then another issue is PCSing. Moving traditionally is every 2 to 4 years. And a lot of women say this directly affects their family support systems and the stability and welfare of their family. And then on a final note, we have sexual harassment, which is another reason why women are not staying in. According to the newest data released by the DoD, there was a 1% increase from 2019 to 2020. So we're looking at over 6,200 sexual assault reports that were people that actually reported being assaulted. And there is a memo in there, though, that specifically states numbers could be skewed because of COVID. So I don't know if that kind of scratches 2020 or not, but that could be a higher increase rate. In the Army, we have a higher prevalence for sexual harassment, more so than assault. However, if harassment does not go corrected, it has a higher probability of eventually turning into sexual assault. And then there's a couple of things that make units and personnel more susceptible to sexual harassment and sexual assault. And that's your climate culture, rapid deployments, and then your combat career fields. So moving forward, women provide diversity. Why is diversity good? Diversity helps with better decision-making. It helps with creativity, innovation. It helps provide a larger talent pool. You have less employee turnover, you have more employee engagement, and it creates higher success and growth for the individual employees and the organization as a whole. How can women specifically provide this diversity? Female leaders are said to be more independent, more participative. They're more likely to reward behaviors. They care for the welfare of others. They stress social values. And they stress leadership and follower engagement. And this engagement is known as your transformational leaders, right? So women care about the individual followers, their morale, their motivation, and then their potential that they have. Generationally speaking, transformational leaders or a female leadership style are more effective today than they've ever been in American society. So I feel the more leaders, more female leaders we have today, the more influential they will be for female growth in the future. Here's a lot of my resources. Moving on to resume for military members. It is essential that military members know and understand that once you get your DD-214, you are considered a veteran. And I cannot stress this enough because I have met people, predominantly reserve members, they do not understand that they are considered veterans. That piece of paper, as long as you have an honorable discharge, or other than dishonorable, I would guess is the proper way to say that, you are considered a veteran and you can use this to your benefit, and you should. When leaving the Army, no matter if you're active duty or reserves, I cannot speak on National Guard. They are owned by the state level, so it's kind of, you know, unknown territory for me. You are required to take transitioning programs when you get out. You learn resume writing, you learn creative financial plans, you have internship opportunities. Many soldiers don't truly understand the importance of transitioning out of the military into the civilian sector, and that's why resume writing is so important for military members. When you are doing your resume, you need 3 forms with you. You want your DD-214, you want your verification, military experience, and your soldier brief. All of these are accessible to you while you are still in service. So all 3 of these papers are going to tell you all of the classes and the courses you've been to as a military member. And from there, you want to Google your courses. And you want to, sorry, I totally lost my place. Based on the courses you attended and course description and objective and your real world experience executing the job, you will better understand the bigger picture of the courses you took, and it will help you relate it into the civilian sector. So understanding the big picture is going to help you break down your technical and your intangible skills. For example, I'm a food safety officer. As my technical skill, but my intangible skills is going to be me training the people that are going to replace me in the future and leading them. So there are many different formats that you can choose. I like to highlight my skills when I do a resume. So once you figure out what you're going to apply for, Google is your friend. You want to Google all the things. If you want to be a purchasing manager, Google what that entails. You want to know some key trigger words that you want to put into your resume. You want to see if there's any sort of credentialing that you might have and don't realize, which is why you should Google. It's going to help you understand how to rewrite your military experience into civilian words. Leave out military jargon, leave out military acronyms. For example, if you are a government purchase card holder, GPC holder, you have purchasing experience, but you do not put GPC holder. You would put something along the lines of purchasing. You want to create multiple variations of your resume to cater to the different jobs you may be applying for, and just do a simple save as. And so that way you can stay organized when you're doing this. Reserve members. I need you to remember when you're doing your resume, you are always employed. You do not have a break in service. So for example, I joined in August 2006. My resume reads Army Reserve Food Safety Officer, August 2006 until present. So I have 2 jobs that say the date and year until present, and that is okay. You always want to promote your military experience because people want to hire that. They want the unique skill sets that you have developed. And when you submit your resume, blank out your social security number on your DD-214 and submit that with your resume as proof of service. And that might help expedite you as well. I'm done, that's all. Thank you, everyone.
And next, we're going to hear from Judge Gerhart.
Okay, I think most people have their cameras kind of blacked out. Is that what we're doing?
Could we ask people to be on camera with us, please, so we know that they're present?
It's hard to talk to a blank screen. That's the only reason why I ask.
Exactly right. I agree with you.
Okay. Well, I think some people's cameras may not be working, or they're blacked out, but I guess I'm not as organized as Courtney, and I appreciate her presentation. I don't have a PowerPoint. But what I would talk about is basically my experience. I'm in the more of the public kind of government sector. I've been a public servant basically my whole career. When I was in law school, I interned at the DA's office my first and second summers, and that's when I kind of developed my excitement for prosecution and decided to try to get a job at the DA's office in El Paso County, which is Colorado Springs. And I was super excited. My first summer as an intern, there was a death penalty case going on, which probably most of you know in Colorado is pretty rare. And it was a couple of co-defendants. It was one that was on trial. They were on trial for kidnapping and raping and killing a young woman, Jacine Galinsky. And I got to work with the appeal team on that. And it was exciting, and it got me really excited about what the DA's office does. On that case, they had 2 prosecutors assigned. The 2 prosecutors tried the case, but then also the appeals deputy at the time was there on the spot to handle any issues and motions. So me as an intern kind of came into play as someone who could help out with any issues that come up in court, which come up frequently. So I got to help with that, and that was a great thing. And so then I came back as a summer intern for my 2L year, and got to actually try cases and be in a division and things like that. I interviewed for my job as a deputy district attorney after graduating from law school, and after actually it was before I passed the bar. I was offered a job contingent upon passing the bar, and I remember sitting in that interview because I'd never gone through anything like it before. I had my resume, I had all of my experience from El Paso County. I also worked as an intern in Norman, Oklahoma, when I went to school at the University of Oklahoma. I had all of my experience on my resume, and then I just remember sitting down with the elected district attorney, Jeannie Smith at the time, and several of the upper people, chiefs, and the assistant DA. And one thing, one of the things I looked at as far as we're talking about resume building and interview techniques is I did not know what I was saying in that interview. And it was kind of funny at the time. I ended up getting the job mainly because they knew me as a first and second year summer intern, so they knew my work. But I just remember my elected DA asked me specifically, would you legalize prostitution? And I started out with no. And by the end of the interview, I had changed my answer to yes. And so one tip I can probably give you is don't change your answer in the middle of the question, and be a little direct and specific with your answer, because I kind of look like an idiot, and I'm sure I was. But again, the thing about public service versus most other private sectors, I would say, is you have the benefit of getting in there as an intern and things like that, as say maybe a legal assistant, paralegal on your way to becoming a lawyer, where your work ethic and your commitment to the job means more than a 15-minute interview that you can screw up much like I did. But I was luckily given the job and worked my way up through the office. I think that one of the things that people would find maybe surprising is that in an office like the district attorney's office, the advancement is pretty streamlined, meaning I started off as an intern, became a deputy district attorney, eventually made my way into a floater position, which was a supervisor position in county court. After that, you go to district court, you get some felony experience and things like that, but then you can become a senior district attorney, a chief deputy district attorney, all the way up to the assistant, or if you want to run to be the elected district attorney. But it's pretty streamlined. And I really have only had to interview for 2 jobs. I've just been a district attorney and then become a county court judge. And so what I do want to emphasize is that if you're interested in becoming a public servant, working for someone like the district attorney's office or the public defender's office or anyone, the attorney general's office, there's so much need. People don't realize it. People get intimidated because it's technically a government job, but it's something that is important, and there are constant needs for everything from legal assistants to paralegals, all the way up to leadership roles as attorneys and things like that. And I would not discourage anybody who has any kind of interest in working in public government or public service to apply and go through the process. I, again, don't have the PowerPoint. Resume writing is very important. Just like Courtney said, I would say more than that, if you can get into one of those offices and volunteer or provide any kind of, I mean, we have everybody from listening to jail calls to becoming victim advocates to anything in the DA's office that you're interested in. Giving that volunteer time is a huge critical thing that is even more important than your resume. Obviously, you want to put all of your experience on your resume, and I did. After I got hired as a district attorney and became eventually chief deputy district attorney in county court, I spent about 16 years at the district attorney's office and tried many cases, everything from, simple misdemeanors all the way up to homicides, sex assaults, things like that were serious stuff. And I kind of got to the point where I wanted to see what was next. So I applied to be a judicial officer at the El Paso County Courthouse. There was an opening with Division H. I was in the middle of a homicide trial. It was kind of at the end of my rope, kind of ready for a change. Applied. Everyone said, you don't get it on your first try. You might as well go through the process and give it a chance. And what I can tell you is that in that role, it was more of an application than a resume. So they want to know kind of your experience and things. It was more based on cases that you've handled, how you've handled them, and things like that. But it also included letters of recommendation, which I always think is important when you are writing a resume. Even if they don't ask for something like, say, a cover letter, put a cover letter on there and tell them why you want the job and what you bring to the job that nobody else can. Include letters of reference from people that know you, not just people that can say, hey, this person would be great, but not give any real insight. Get a cover letter done, and then get some letters of reference done from people that can really talk about you as a person and you as someone who can do a good job. And so I would add that. But you fill out this application to become a judicial officer. It's pretty intimidating. You have to give a personal statement and things like that as to why you would be fair and impartial and why you would be a good judge, kind of thing. So I went through that process, went through the initial interview with the El Paso County Nominating Commission. They sort through the applications. They decide the people they want to interview. They send 3 names up to the governor, which is what they did. They sent 3 names up, and my name went up, and I was really shocked. In fact, when the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court called me, I said, are you sure you called the right number? This is Shannon Gerhart. And so, no, he laughed and said, yeah, no, I've got the right number. So told me, you're going to interview with the governor on this day and time. It was Governor Hickenlooper at the time. So I went in with my application filled out, not so much a resume, but kind of did the interview. It was a lot easier than the one down here. They just kind of wanted to hear war stories and things like that with some of my more serious cases. And then ended up becoming appointed to the bench in 2017. And so I would honestly say, if you're interested in the public sector, again, not only is there a need, and not only should you not be intimidated, reach out to somebody that you may know in the office that you're interested in. Get your papers together. something as simple as just a cover letter and spelling everything correctly, having read over everything and making sure there's no errors and things like that go a long way. You don't make the kind of money that you would make in the kind of the government, the DA's office, the public defender's office, things like that, that you might in the private sector working for a private defense attorney. But the reward is so much greater. And so I encourage you, if you just take your time on things like your resume and get some letters of reference, you will get an interview. And if you are taking your 15-20 minute interview and talking very personally, that's really all anybody wants to know in 15 or 20 minutes. You know, are you a normal person and can you do the work? That's what we're getting to. And I've interviewed many people over my career as a district attorney, and now as a judicial officer. I'm the chief presiding judge in county court, so we interview magistrates and things like that, but you don't have a lot of time to talk to people. So take your 15 or 20 minutes and make it important. Sell yourself. It's not the time to be humble. Make sure that you talk about things that other people can't. What can you bring to the job that other people can't is what I would really stress. We're fortunate. Courtney has probably come up with a lot more sexism and things like that than I have. Unlike women in the military, we actually have more female judges today in 2021 than we do male judges, which is probably the first time in I don't even know how long, which I think is great. I have a pin actually I wear on my robe that says, you know, when will we have enough female judges, and it's when there is 9. And so that's from, you know, RBG. So that's a huge thing. Sexism has always been an issue. In my career, I graduated from law school in 2001. So when I graduated, I was about 23 years old. When I became a district attorney, I had a father of a victim tell me, "You look like you're 12, we're screwed." And that really hit home to me because I was very prepared. I took my job seriously, and I, you know, obviously took his daughter's case seriously, but it's something that we can't escape as women. And I think that it's getting better. Towards the end of my career, it was definitely better. But even as a chief deputy district attorney, as a female, I had a senior deputy district attorney who was about I'd say a 65-year-old man who, so it was a chief DA, and then he was my senior DA. So I would give him certain things to do and tasks and things like that. We would walk into a room, say at CSPD, the Colorado Springs Police Department, or El Paso County Sheriff's Office, or wherever it was, and they just automatically assumed that he was my boss. And so that was, you know, it took a little bit to get over. Luckily, I had a senior, and he would always say, "I don't know, you need to ask my boss," kind of thing. I think that's a thing we're going to struggle with for a long time. But I do applaud the advancement that women are making in the area. And I just, if I say anything that means anything, it's if you're interested in becoming a public servant, there's a need, and you know, make sure you take your time with your resume, spell check it, turn it in. You're going to get an interview, and there's only one way but up from where you start. So I know we're going to do questions at the end, but if there's anything else I can hit, I'm happy to do that.
Thank you so much, Judge Gerhart. Bree, do you have a question? No, you're just.
Just an applause.
Applause.
Virtual
I'm
applause.
sorry. Thank you.
It is really, really hard to talk to an empty computer screen. So I don't know if I'm hitting what I need to or not.
No complaints. Our next speaker is Nanette Brady Mueller. Thank you for coming.
I'm sorry, you blipped, Robin. Do you want me to speak or is Tammy up next?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, no, you are, please.
Okay, sorry about that. Hi, everyone. My name's Nanette Brady. I'm really delighted to be here today and really hard to follow in Judge Gerhart's footsteps, and Courtney, what great information you provided us. So thanks for setting the stage, you guys. So Robin has asked me to talk about resume writing for military spouses and veterans. Can I see a show of hands? How many of you have ever served in the military? Okay, and how many of you are military spouses? And how many of you have never served? Okay, so we've got a nice
Dependent. Military brat.
military brat. Okay, any other military brats out there besides Robert? Jen, you hit all the boxes. Well, good. Well, thank you. I needed to know how to cover the information. So I'm going to be a little more generic than I had originally planned. I teach a class in conjunction with Mount Carmel Veterans Service Center called Prep Connect 360. It is a free week-long workshop for transitioning active duty, reservists, guardsmen, veterans, and military spouses. And we have been doing that for 9 years now. And we've had over 850 students in the class. So our goal is to help military and veterans and spouses transition from military life into civilian life. And because it's all about changing environment. But I think it also applies to changing from being a student into becoming a full-time employee, because life is changing from being in school all the time to now you've got to focus, you've got to change your focus a little bit. So Judge Gerhart mentioned you need to pull information out, and Courtney did the same thing for your resumes. And a couple of the different areas that are important for those military folks are to pull information off of your awards. And that's for anybody that's received an award. So pull the data off of the awards, your NCOERs, your annual reviews that you get, whether they are OERs or whatever. But if you've gotten an annual review at any job you've had, pull the details and facts out of that. And now you've got some talking points to help you formulate the information off of your resume. When it comes to writing a resume, there's two different styles that are popular right now. One is chronological, and we all think chronologically. The other is functional. And functional is just basically that. It's particularly good if you are changing careers and you want to highlight all of the skills from a previous career that's maybe 4 or 5 or 6 years ago and highlight that as opposed to your most current job. Because sometimes I know a lot of the guys in the military have gone from tank drivers and now they want to go into IT. Well, if you were a Bradley driver, okay, in the infantry, for example, that whole Bradley is full of IT equipment. So you've got to spin the story so you have worked on IT, even though you've been driving a tank or a Bradley. Does that make sense? So it's how you, I don't want to say twist, but you manipulate the verbiage so that it's, one, still factual, because you can get fired if you lie on a resume. Okay. But you want to pull out the facts and the skills that you have. The other important thing that Judge Gerhart mentioned was volunteer work. So even if you have been a stay-at-home mom, even if you have been a high school kid and did volunteer work clear back in the day, let's pull out some of those things that you did as a volunteer and add those to the resume. Now, you do not want to wave a big red flag and say, I did this as a volunteer. Nothing on your resume says, and how much did you get paid to do that job? Everything I've done with Prep Connect 360 is volunteer time. But right now, that would be at the top of my chronological resume as what I've been doing for the last 9 years. You see the difference? They didn't ask you how much you made on that resume, and you don't have to tell them there. They may ask you, however, on a job application. Okay, now there's a couple different types of resumes I want to hit on real quickly. The first thing is not a resume. Your biography is not a resume. A biography which covers your entire life history is not a resume. And I say that because I've gotten some 8 and 10 page long resumes, and the person that submitted it said, oh, you can choose the information you want off my resume. I don't think so. Now, in academia and the medical arena, there is something called a CV, or curriculum vitae, and it's normally a 50-page resume, and that's what my dad's was. It listed every course he ever taught, every course he ever attended, every paper he wrote, every piece of metal he worked on, because he was a metallurgical engineer. So it's a different focus. So it depends upon the type of environment and work you're going into, okay? So when most employers here in Colorado Springs are looking for a 2-page resume, 2 pages. Now, the reason I say 2 pages is because that is the first test that they're looking for. Can you read and follow instructions and send me a 2-page resume? I know it's simple, guys and gals, but it's a test. It's part of the job. One of the other quirky things, for example, if you are applying to the county, they want to know if you have a Colorado driver's license. Do you know why? They want to know if you can get to work. Will you show up? All right. So one of the other things that has come to light that we talk about in Prep Connect is a lot of times women think that they have to be 100% match for the criteria that's spelled out in a job announcement. And that's not true. Even if and women are much less apt to fill out an announce or to send in a resume if it doesn't meet 100% of the criteria. A good rule of thumb is if you have 75 to 80% of the blocks checked in your mind, then go ahead and apply. Okay, because here's the secret. That job announcement could be just dusted off from when old Bob left that job 70 years ago, and he's been there 70 years, and he knows where every piece of paper and every secret and every skeleton of that company is hidden, right? And the secret sauce, he's got that recipe memorized, and they think they can hire somebody that already has all of that knowledge. And they're never going to find an exact replacement for Bob. So that job announcement sometimes is just a wish list. Sometimes that job announcement is just some scribbled good ideas. and they're waiting for you to come in during the interview and tell them what they really need. Okay. And talking about the interview, that is a whole different subject. I'd love to get into that with you guys at another point in time, but making a connection during that interview is so important, because people hire people they know, like, trust, and remember. They know, like, trust, and remember. So if you think about how hard it is to interview, say, everybody that's on the screen with us this evening, and try and remember who stood out and told the story about their dog, or about their success in graduating early, or whatever that story is, you've got to resonate with people. You've got to make a connection with that people. And if you're not reading the walls behind them in their office, I imagine if we go into Judge Gerhart's office, there are certificates all over the walls, don't you think? And there are pictures on her desk. Don't you think we're going to try and find something that matches us so we can connect? The kids that play in the same soccer league, your favorite football team, the fact that they like to mountain bike and you like to mountain bike. Find something to connect with people. Okay, something else Judge Gerhart touched on very briefly is called an informational interview. It is find someone that works in that building, in the office, in the company that you want to apply for, that you know. By the way, LinkedIn is a professional networking social media platform, and go looking for people that you already know that work in that company. Now, here's why. Many companies these days are giving referral bonuses. And sometimes those bonuses can be upwards of $5,000. Now, how tacky would it be for you to be walking down the hall of a company that you just got hired into, and you ran into a friend that you didn't bother to contact before you applied, and you basically screwed them out of, excuse the language, out of that bonus. So be a good friend, reach out to the people you know, and do two things. One, give them your resume and ask them to forward it to HR, okay? The other thing too is take them out to coffee, not in the office building, in safe territory, and ask them the hard questions. I did that with a friend of mine. I was going to apply for a nonprofit position where Craig already worked. And we sat down, had coffee, and the first thing out of his mouth was, Nanette, do not come here. The chain of command does not, they do lip service for supporting veterans. They do not do it. You will not be happy. So I listened for that red flag. Guess who did not apply there? Okay, so those are a couple of tips I have for you. By the way, here's one more tip on the interview things I wanted to mention to you. Know, like, trust, and remember is important, but remember that what you're looking for, they know by your resume that you can do the job. What they are looking for during that resume, during the interview rather, is, do I want to spend 8 to 10 hours a day with you? Do I like your stupid jokes? Because basically you're going to spend more quality time with those people in the office than you do with your spouse. So I'd love to have you join us at Prep Connect 360. And I'm going to turn this back to Robin. Thank you all so much for your time.
Thank you. That was excellent. Last but not least, Tammy Bloomfield.
Good evening, everyone. I'm really happy to be here. Thank you, especially I look at these young women and, I have college-age kids. who don't want to listen to me, and I totally respect that because you can't hear this from your parents, but I have a lot to say and I think it's constructive, and I'm happy to share it with you. So just sort of figuring out how to put it all in context that hopefully you will get something out of it. I was going to sort of share my experience, my journey, how I got where I am, so that you can see how random things tie together a little bit. Share some of my experience as a woman, because I see that theme is coming up. My resume advice, which is not going to be nearly as professional as Nanette's, but it comes from a place of my own experience. And then a little bit about working for the FBI, because everyone loves that. It's a very like sexy job, I guess. And I have enjoyed, pulling that out at cocktail parties and things like that. So, as an undergrad, I was in New York at SUNY Binghamton, as it was mentioned. I was a poli-sci major, didn't know what to do with my life. Law school, some teacher told me I'd be a good lawyer. So I was like, okay, that postpones that decision. I'll do that. I graduated a semester early from college, and I got a job as a paralegal at a big law firm in New York City called Skadden Arps, Slate, Meagher and Flom, doing mergers and acquisition work. So as a paralegal, we made lots of money. We got cars. It was the 80s. Like there was a lot. I hated it. Like in tears. Oh my God. Oh, I'd been accepted to law school, prepared to start in the fall. This was supposed to be a semester job. Miserable. I called the school and asked to defer a year. And then I went and worked for the Manhattan District Attorney's Office as a paralegal. Loved it, got back on track. Just sharing these experiences because you're going to find things that don't meet expectations. And my goal, and is encouraging everyone, just keep moving forward. It will fit together at some point. So after working at the DA's office, and I did that for an entire year, I went to law school. I got into law school. I wanted some options. I found out there was a master's degree program that I could get in mass communications, thinking I'd be the next Nina Totenberg. For those of you who know her, she does NPR and she does commentary on the courts. I was like, that's what I'm going to do. That just sort of didn't pan out. I got a clerkship after a federal clerkship, because that's kind of like a cool thing to do if you get the opportunity, and met my husband, who lived in LA. And so I was just scrambling to get a job in LA. And this idea of, doing this communication thing is kind of like went by the wayside because I had really big student loans. I borrowed all my money for law school. So then after the clerkship, I worked for a big law firm doing civil litigation. Again, found myself at the desk going, I hate this. I'm billing in 6-minute increments. I'm super stressed. And at the end of the day, I'm just worried about getting money from one overly paid group to another overly paid group, like very unsatisfying. And there was a tombstone ad in our legal newspaper, which is called the Daily Journal here. It was like, wanted by the FBI. And then it had this cool job description. And then go to Nanette's point about, don't apply if all the points don't match. Believe me, what was in that job description and what I do don't match. So, lesson learned there. But anyway, it sounded cool, sounded not like, practicing law. And I interviewed for that. And the reason I tell that whole long story about myself is there I sit in this FBI office in this very unicorn job. Basically, like every field office has a little group. Sometimes it's one. In our office, we're so big, we have 5. A group of lawyers. We act as like in-house counsel, like company lawyers, only we're lawyers for the FBI, not a company. But historically, until me, every one of those lawyers was an agent, an FBI agent first, because it used to be, to be an FBI agent, you were either an accountant or a lawyer. So they had lots of lawyers to pull from. But then they start really realizing in the late 90s, they have these lawyers, but they haven't practiced law. They don't know civil litigation. They haven't seen, inside of a courtroom. And they really need, as this profession and this responsibility is growing and becoming more important in the office, like someone who has legal experience. And so I always say that's, change in policy and all that. And I got that job, first attorney that was not an agent, hired into a field office as a legal counsel. So all those weird experiences, deferring law school, working at the DA's office, doing some civil litigation, getting a clerkship, somehow combined to make this resume for this crazy job that I got. So keep plugging forward. I just, want to share that with everyone because it sometimes can be a little bit of a meandering path. I wanted to, as you know, my experience as a woman, I graduated in law school in 1991. Half of my class was women in Boston University. Didn't feel like this was an issue anymore, you know. I did, the first day of my federal clerkship, I wore my very best suit, which happened to be a pantsuit. I remember stepping 1 foot into chambers, like very nervous. The judge's secretary was sitting at her desk. She sort of was like the, you know, keeper of the office. And I had literally my full body was not in the office. And she took one look at me up and down. She'd been the judge's secretary for a million years and said, "We're in court today. You're wearing pants. Judge Reed does not like women in pants." So devastating on so many levels. Like, go to my desk or whatever. You know what? Judge Reed came in about 20 minutes later and no, he didn't say it to me. This is very unlike him. But Norma came to me 20 minutes later and said, "Judge Reed says that you look like a young professional woman should look." And when you know, Norma started wearing pants to work too, pantsuits to work, but she was very old school. But I'll never forget that story. I was shocked by that. Fast forward, working for my law firm in LA, pantsuits clearly acceptable, right? I was going to court one day and one of the women partners was meeting me in court. I had my very best red pantsuit on. Went to court. After the hearing, she came and gave me a little talking to about how red pantsuits might not be appropriate for women. So I'm sure no men get criticized for their work, but those are some of the things. And mind you, both of those were women, right? That kind of were pointing out. So I think we have to be really careful among ourselves to bolster our, you know, each other up. I would say any sexism other than that coming from men is much more like, you know, insidious, right? And I don't even know that it's always intentional, but it often comes in the form of being underestimated. And while that sucks, and I think it does, I think it was Courtney, you were talking about the lack of mentorship and how that affects it. I think that really does do damage to us. And I think, you know, it's only after looking back on a career can you see where those opportunities, a lack of opportunities maybe hurt you. So that's true, but also it can be like a superpower too, because when people underestimate you, you automatically have an advantage. So, you know, I've definitely seen that in my career too. All right, going on to my resume advice. I'll share with you, because I think I'm kind of in it now. I have a fantastic job with the FBI. I'm going to try and sell you all on considering the FBI in a minute, but I don't want to leave or need to leave or anything like that. However, the strange thing has happened where sometimes they rotate through positions and there's an opportunity for early retirement, which I have a window for. So it's a ridiculous window. It's like 2 months. If I tell them, hey, I'm going to retire, I can keep my pension with no penalty versus waiting out the full term. No encouragement to leave, nothing like that. I see it as an opportunity. And maybe at my age, like, maybe I have a chapter 2, right? So I'm going to look. And if in this 2-month window, I get another unicorn job that would help me grow, I'd certainly be interested in taking it. So I share that with you because I'm out there too, for the first time after 22 years in the same job. This whole resume thing has changed, right? I'm on ZipRecruiter, I'm on LinkedIn, totally fascinating. So when I think about the resume I was preparing 22 years ago and worrying about typos and everything, it's very different now. In some ways, it's so much easier, much less excusable to have a typo, right? Because there's a lot of self-correction. You have to look to make sure it's right, but that's certainly helpful. And I'm also finding that you can have your beautiful resume, but when you're applying for jobs, they maybe like auto import that into their system, but they have their own paradigm where they want your information, right? And the FBI too, when we get here, they're like, fill out the federal resume or the bureau resume or whatever it is. There's not a lot of discretion on how to do that. So my advice for the resume is just do stuff. And I think I'm echoing Nanette, volunteer, and everybody else here. Just everything you do, like, don't be so in your head about the perfect job. Like, it's surprising what little things will combine and it will work it out and show some reflection of your work ethic, personality, interests, and it will serve you ultimately in your resume. I even say, like, keep a file, like, you know, what you're doing, because you forget, and B, anytime you've done something, I found this in my life, you completely devalue it, right? Like anytime there's an accomplishment, once you've done it, you're like, not so big. And so it's important that while you're doing it, you kind of keep a notation of it. Like any project that you've done, like you want to say, not only did I do X job, but I did this specific project. Now, in the FBI for our leadership advancement, we have to do interviews and things like that. And they have a system where you get interviewed about things and they want to hear it in a certain system, which I think is productive for this purpose too. The issue, what you did, and the result. And they want you to answer questions in that sort of picture. So it's a great way to think about any projects that you're working in any job, just jot them down, because I'm also seeing with resumes, they don't just want a like generic description of a job. They want to see like, I accomplished this audit, like without getting too boring into the details. And this was a problem. I did this audit. This was the result. And so if you capture those things as you do them, it's great. And don't be worried about like how insignificant they seem to you. I know people get paralyzed. They're like, oh, this isn't so important in the big scheme of things. It is. It shows that you see a big picture. You can get something done. You can articulate it. So that's sort of something I think about writing resumes today. What else? Any skills that you acquire? Like, I mean, you know, I don't want to put such lofty things out there that like depresses people, but computer skills, computer programs, things, languages, like all that stuff, even if it's not necessarily applicable for that job, it just shows intellectual curiosity, capability, like you're engaged. I think those are really great things. My two little secret tips on resumes that I will share is one, it was my resume for the FBI, because that was the last one. I really, really wanted that job. So I was like, 5 minutes, got it. Conjuring up ideas, like what can separate me? Even like the ridiculous jobs I had, every job I've had, I've been invited to return, right? So they like, and it was a powerful thing. So I would put such as even Jamba Juice, right? You know, worked this summer, whatever, in a parenthetical next to it, invited to return, invited to my law firm, invited to return. Like that spoke volumes. Like already someone can look at it like you are not leaving any job on bad terms. You are not leaving any job because you have to. People like you. So that's my little, and I remember someone reading and saying, I've never seen this on a resume. So I did that. My husband just walked in. He's watching me. So I'm feeling self-conscious now. So that was tip, invited to return, and then leave a teaser. So this is another thing, like put your hobbies, whatever there's a section for it or something. Like it's really nice to be able to say something like, I run as a hobby. And then, you know, that gets picked up in a conversation. And then if you can zap them with, yeah, I've run a marathon, let's talk about that. Or even if you say run parenthetical marathons, that gives them an opportunity to be like, what marathon? So I always find when I have in my resume, little like teasers like that make an obvious start for a conversation, that's super helpful. That's my other stealth tip. And my third stealth tip, Nanette already took, but I have a different angle on it. And that is get someone on the inside to pull your resume, because I can tell you, even in my little search right now, what I'm doing, my resume reads the way it reads, but like it's when someone's on the inside, whether they're in a position to be in the hiring power or not, just someone that can vouch for you makes all the difference. And I've read statistics about it, especially as all the stuff is online. Something like 80% of interviews are given when someone, at least someone walks in and says, hey, I know that person, make sure you look at that resume. And even for the FBI, it's not the same system, but I would call one of our recruiters, just to make sure that your resume is getting routed all the right ways, right? That it's not getting missed by some silly bureaucratic mishap, right? That you have someone on the inside shepherding your things through. I think you'll get more success. Okay, finally, my plug for the FBI, diversity, being a woman, believe me, I've seen like some sexism. We're not perfect, but I love working for the federal government in the sense that we are trying to do the right thing. We are putting legislation, we might be late, but it is definitely on the forefront of a value. And I think that's probably some of my attraction to it. So even when we fail, it's that we're failing when we're trying. And I think it's having a mission, no matter how real the struggle is through the bureaucracy, at the end of the day, if you're like, I'm just trying, even if I can only do it incrementally to do the right thing, it's a very, very nice place to be in a profession. So that was my spiel. I'm happy to answer any questions, but hopefully I hit some points that were of interest.
Yeah, thank you, Tammy. I'm just kind of blown away by all the great information, the golden nuggets that we have been given today. And I want to open up for a few minutes to questions for anybody who might have questions for our 4 panelists. Oh, Emily, please.
So I have a quick one. I'm currently applying for a bunch of jobs kind of here and there everywhere. So this one might kind of go out to anybody. I applied for a federal job through Homeland Security, TSA, and their minimum job requirement was a bachelor's degree, which I have. I'm a master's student. But once I got into like the actual application, they kept asking me like a ton of questions, like, do you have experience with this? Like, and they list it. And so I would answer honestly, because I wasn't, obviously don't lie. And then I got an email back saying I'm not qualified for the job. And I was like, so I thought it was interesting because like all they asked was a bachelor's degree, but then they were asking all these questions and then say I wasn't qualified. So I don't know if anybody had any advice or thought on that.
Can I speak on it? Did you apply through USA Jobs?
I did, yes.
Okay, so USA Jobs, those jobs are special to get. So your resume goes through a computer, right? And that computer looks for keywords. And if those keywords are not in your resume, even if you say you have everything else, they do not compute. The computer will not push you further. And therefore you won't get an opportunity to interview. So that's why it's key to take your running resume or your original resume and literally copy and paste things out of it and put it in. I have a good example. My husband's in the Space Force, right? And for his jobs, they deal with space. They had somebody come up for a resume interview, and he has like spatial awareness because he's more of construction and not space, like outer space. So the computer is flawed in that sense. However, because of those keywords, he was pushed up in the interview process and obviously didn't get the job, but yeah. So those jobs are tricky. And there's actually a Facebook page that will teach you how to get federal jobs as well.
So what Courtney is talking about is called an applicant tracking system. And most of the big companies use it. So it's kind of like a game. You've got to get through the applicant tracking system, i.e. the computer, before you can get to the HR rep who's going to refer you to the hiring manager. So you've got to use their words to represent what you have done. So go do a matchy, because that computer will kick you out if it doesn't have enough keywords.
That's very helpful. Thank you.
So it wasn't you. Try it again, Emily.
Thank you. You make me feel more hopeful about this. So.
I will say that federal employees, they need to be vaccinated by 22 November. And if they're not, they're going to start losing jobs. So come October and January, there's probably going to be things that are open. So just take this as a lesson learned and you'll be fine.
I already had to be vaccinated by the university, so that's good.
There you go. Check that box. Add that.
Yeah, I already got that done.
Add it to your resume.
Right?
I had a question, and maybe this is for Nanette. You know, I have a student who's a military spouse, and she said that specifically she's had a rough time because she's moved so many places and oftentimes either didn't get the job during that period or just has so many little jobs for not very much time. So what advice would you give her?
I think what she needs to look for are the common skills that she used and turn it into a functional resume so it doesn't look like she was job hopping or couldn't keep a job. So, and then add in any volunteer work that she has done. That's the best way to do it.
Excellent, thank you. I forgot about the functional resume. So yeah, perfect.
The other thing I failed to mention, you guys, is you need to tailor your resume. And this is very much what we're talking about with Emily, is you've got to match your resume against the job announcement and use their words back in your resume. And if you don't take the time to do that, it looks like a generic resume and it's not going to get selected. So make it easy on the HR rep to say yes to you.
Thank you. Regina, do you have a question?
I do. I have a question that's specific for Honorable Judge Gerhart and Mrs. Bloomfield, and then I have a separate one for Miss Nanette. I am not even going to try to butcher your last name, so I apologize in advance. So when you guys were talking about volunteer and intern jobs, especially because we are recording this and for other people who might be watching it, where would they go to look for some of those volunteer or intern jobs, specifically within the El Paso County court system and within the FBI?
Your Honor, I have to.
So first of all, it's Shannon. I'm off the clock. So go ahead if you want to talk from the federal, maybe the federal angle.
Yeah, there. If you go to the it's pretty limited for the FBI that I can speak to. There is like an honors intern program that's pretty amazing. If you go to the FBI website and look under internships, you can apply for it, and it's I think after your junior senior year. But that's an amazing opportunity. But that's the only internship program. We used to do it like directly in field offices, but that's over. So that would be the one way to do it for the FBI.
Awesome, thank you.
And so for the El Paso County District Attorney's Office, which I'm assuming everybody's here in Colorado Springs or around, is that true?
There's kind
Give
of
or take?
Yeah, there's kind of
okay. Well, in the El Paso County, in most DA's offices, there's a volunteer coordinator. And so you can actually get on the DA's office website and look at not only who is the volunteer coordinator, but all of the jobs are listed. That is for non-lawyer type of things. I would suggest, even if it's not posted, submit your resume, because maybe you're looking for a legal assistant position. It's not posted right away, but I promise you they will be. So hook up with that volunteer coordinator. As far as a lawyer intern, you can still go through the volunteer coordinator and she'll get you in touch with who you need to, which attorney kind of handles that. I would also say that in El Paso County, the district attorney's office loves military people. Now, like Nanette said, you might need to explain the reason why you have moved from job to job, maybe over every couple of years. But I can tell you, me personally, as well as my department manager, hired many, many military wives who told us right at the get-go, I may only be here for 2 to 4 years. Great. We have a good, awesome legal assistant, paralegal, whatever it is that we need to fill the spot. It could be data entry, it could be anything, but but that is one thing about public service. Like I've already probably said 100 times, there's always positions. We are happy to have military people. I would say be straight up. I'm not going to be here for 10 years, but I can give you 2 to 4 till my husband deploys or goes, you know, wherever. That's a great thing to do in our office. Well, I say our office still, even though I've been a judge for a bit. It's Gwen Stein. And if you just go to the website, all of her information is there. Since Regina asked me a question, I'm just going to talk for 2 seconds and then I'll feel like I did my job tonight. Tammy, you're my hero. I always wanted some FBI sweatpants. And so that was always my goal. And then I found out because I just ended up in Colorado Springs and I loved it. But I always told my grandma, I'm going to join the FBI and I'm going to get those sweatpants.
I can hook you up.
Nanette, you touched on the lingo and you're so right on that. You need to have the right lingo. So knowing somebody on the inside is so helpful. But the only caveat I would give you, especially in the public sector, is make sure that person likes you. Because I've seen a lot of people through the interview process who thinks this is their friend and will throw in a good word, and it's the exact opposite. So I would just say that from many interviews where I've reached out to the person they've referenced, and that person is like, oh no, don't go down that road. And you might want to add to that.
I do. Listen, guys, references are gold. They are like gold, and you've got to treat them with kid gloves. Do not throw somebody's name in the hat as a reference or recommendation unless you have vetted them and asked them if they would do that. I have 2 really bad stories of people that used my name and didn't ask permission, and neither of which could I honestly give a good recommendation to. So here's what you do. First of all, reach out to them and ask permission. Second, when you're going to give a recommendation, notify that person, send them a copy of the job announcement and your resume, and maybe some talking points. Here's what I want you to highlight for me, boss. Okay. And then after the fact, send them a thank you note and let them know if you got the job. But ask their permission. Make sure you know which is the best way to contact them. Email, telephone, during the duty day, after hours, and make sure you have a good phone number for them. But do not just put references on your resume. Do not do that. Wait until they're asked for, and then make sure you've teed up your recommendation, your people in advance. Thanks.
Agree. Yeah, I've had the same situation where people have put me as a reference, and I'm thinking, what? You act like we never met. I can't give you. Yeah. So the only other thing I was going to add to that was my DA was my district attorney that was elected was a woman that hired me. We were not allowed to wear pantsuits for jury trials. And I didn't know that rule until I showed up for a jury trial with pantsuits on, and a fellow woman DA ratted me out. And I actually got in trouble for that. And so the only reason I throw that out there is to say that today I wore jeans to work. So hey, it's 2021.
Yeah, no,
So
I have a story about that. Shortly after in between the law firm and the FBI, I got called for jury duty. So
yeah.
I had my own little focus group then on this issue, because I felt it was very personal to me. And I asked the jury that I was serving with, as the women attorney, there's a criminal trial, the DA wore skirts and pants. I said, are you noticing this? Do you know? And, zero. This was not hitting their radar at all. And I would argue that showing your legs would be the pantsuit thing I could never understand. But I think we are beyond that in 2021. Yeah.
I want to hope so. We had to wear pantyhose. That was like a thing with the suit, like the dress and whatever. And I was pregnant with my son, Luke, in the middle of a murder trial. And I thought I could hold him in. His due date wasn't till like November 17th. He came October 30th. So, my boss is like, can you do this? I said, yeah. He's not due for like 4 weeks. Okay, well, I'm pretty sure it was defense counsel that pushed him out. He couldn't handle one more day of her. But whoever invented prenatal, well, basically pregnancy, pantyhose, it was some kind of
Torture.
Nazi man that was like, I don't know how to put it, but it was awful, but they do have them and I had to wear them. And so I did actually have my son in the middle of the murder trial, but was able to have my friend finish it up with closing arguments. And then I got to hear the verdict in the hospital room.
No.
So that was something, but honestly, when you're pregnant 9 months almost, and you're still expected to wear pantyhose, I don't understand that at all. But the public defenders honestly didn't have to wear pantyhose and could wear skirts, way up high. So I don't know who decided that rule either. So it's just different. So I'll stop talking now, Regina.
Thank you so much for all that information. And then Nanette, I had one other question, because when you were talking about creating your connection during interviews, I know a lot of interviews are going to either phone-based or virtual platforms where you have the blacked out audiences. Do you have any tips for that as to creating those connections, especially during phone interviews? Because I feel like that's extremely challenging.
Yeah, and it was kind of awkward tonight because I couldn't see anybody. I see everybody now. The last judge that was appointed made the connection with the Chief Justice. He had read something about him that he was a trivia person, and this applicant was a trivia person. And I can't remember who said that, if it was Nanette or Courtney or Tammy, but it really is kind of cool if you can find something that you can connect with them on the phone or WebEx. We use WebEx because you don't get that personal. You don't get to get in there and get personal. They don't get to check you out. You don't get to check them out. So if you can connect with them offline on a hobby or something in my experience, judicial related. One of my commissioners was a horse person, and I'm an avid horse lover and ride and, do all that stuff. So, I connected with her kind of on that level to show I'm a normal person. I'm not some crazy nut trying to get on the bench. I would just say if you could connect to them on a level, even outside of the job that you're applying for, find something that they like. This is probably right up Nanette's alley, so she could probably weigh in even more. But that seemed to work for this last judge who was appointed. They just talked about trivia for like 10 of the 20 minutes that he had.
It's all about being human and making that human connection. You're absolutely right. So you have a couple of resources out there. One is called Google. There is Facebook, and there is LinkedIn. And don't think that those employers are not looking at your social media pages as well. And it's kind of like, and now if you want to see yourself doing keg stands and you're trying to apply for a security clearance, not a good thing. Okay. So you've got to keep your social media clean. And the other thing you want it to do is match your resume. So what you put on your LinkedIn resume ought to match the resume you're submitting pretty close to that job application. But yes, find some common connection that you can, as you said, it's like magnets. I'm a dog lover. So talk about your dog, right? Because you're going to hear about my dog. That sort of thing. Now about doing, that is very important, even on social media, is to have a connection. The other thing you want to do is minimize the junk in your background. When you're doing an interview, you want to make sure that the dog is in the bedroom, so she's not barking at the cats that come into the yard. So there's no disruptions, that the washer and dryer aren't going to be buzzing, that the phone isn't going to ring. You want to be professional and have very clean backgrounds. And I would call it sanitize your space. The other thing you want to do is have really good eye contact with that camera lens right there. Okay. And you want to smile. And because otherwise I'm looking here at your faces and you never see me look at you. So you want to have that eye to eye contact, and that's important as well. And the other thing, this is going to sound really trite, whether it's a telephone call or on the Zoom call, is smile. You want to be personable. You want people to like you. Okay, what else?
That was it for me. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I'm looking at the time, and we have two experts from the Career Center here at UCCS. I'd like to pass it off to them. We have Bri Escobedo and Bailey Ashida, and we would like to have you bring it home.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. Good evening. It's so wonderful to be here with you all tonight. As soon as Emily reached out and kind of filled us in on what the purpose of this event was for, Bailey and I were like, sign us up. We are a team of 3 female career coaches and our director, Danny, also known as a girl dad. We are huge in supporting women in the workplace, and it's huge for our team. So thank you for the speakers. I've absolutely enjoyed hearing your journeys and really just soaking up all of your experience. So, well, my name is Bri Escobedo, and I'm the career exploration coach for the T. Rowe Price Career and Innovation Center. If that name isn't quite ringing a bell, that's because we've recently rebranded our name and our location. So previously we were known as the UCCS Career Center, and we're housed in Cragmore Hall. But as of this semester and 3 weeks ago, we adopted a new name and a space thanks to T. Rowe Price. And we're now located in the University Center, right down the hallway from the information desk. So while this portion of the evening is dedicated to more resume items, I wanted to also just take a minute or 5 to connect with you all and put in a plug for major and career exploration, as well as some resources that we offer in support of your journey. So in my role as an exploration coach, I work with students and alumni at all phases and stages of exploration and life design, from helping students figure out what they want to major in, assisting alumni transition out of one career and into another. My job really just involves offering guidance, resources, and exercises around figuring out, who you are, what you believe in, and what you want to do in the world. And now some of you might be wondering to yourself, but I already know what I want to do. What's the use of exploration? Well, here's the use. In order to figure out what you want to do, Bailey hears me say this all the time, you're going to have to figure out what you don't want to do. Wait, what? Yep, you heard that. In order to figure out what you want to do, you got to figure out what you don't want to do. Unfortunately, the clouds won't open up and a light is not going to shine down and say, Bri, this is what you're on this earth to do. And there's no app that tells us what our passions are, or what we would uniquely enjoy and thrive at. Matter of fact, research from Stanford University's design school found that on average, folks have about 17 jobs and over 5 careers throughout a lifetime. Wait, what? You mean the job that I go into when I get out of college isn't going to be the job that I'm going to do forever? You mean it's okay to change my mind and deviate from my initial path? You mean I could totally pursue that aspiration of being a writer turned Etsy entrepreneur? Absolutely. Because with new jobs comes new experience, comes new skills, comes new insights. And in thinking about your pathway in public affairs, as we've heard from some of the fantastic women tonight, a wide range of experience and roles in a variety of sectors. And your role in this industry and with this degree, it's going to evolve over time. the more that you explore, the more intentionality and purpose that you can bring to your major, to your work, and the goals that are there to get you there. And as a result, the more that you explore, the more possibility for your interest and for your foci to morph a little bit. An alumni I've been working with, for example, her major was in communication studies, and she went on to be a wedding planner. Then she was a journalist. Now she owns a restaurant. And then most recently, she's actually developing storyboards for commercials. A good friend of mine is a trained psychotherapist, and she left her counseling practice to pursue marketing with a nonprofit agency that specializes in mental health. So in both of these stories, you can see, a string of similar interests, industries, roles taken on each of these persons' paths. But, your emphasis and your specialization will most likely fluctuate. It'll ebb and flow, it'll become refined, or you may deviate into another arena that utilizes your skills, your talents, your strengths to explore the areas that you're passionate about and that you're organically drawn towards. So, now that all that's said, it's not said to discourage you, but hopefully to offer, a gentle insight into the organic nature of us as human beings when it comes to exploration, right? And also tapping into the mindset that your area of focus, specialization, or emphasis in public affairs, may morph into something new. I always tell my undergrad students, being on a college campus is really like being on a playground. It's your sandbox, and you're surrounded by people, departments, resources, all geared towards, helping you be your best. So take advantage of that, radically connect with your peers, with your mentor, with your faculty, with the staff. Showing up tonight is a wonderful way to hear more from the experts in your areas of interest. Not only expanding your network, but also offering you real life, context and experience so that you can make a better decision about what path you want to pursue next. So keep doing that. Specifically though, where I come in and where I can help is not only around resources to explore pathways and such, but really more in an interactive, reflective, and creative appointment process we house at the Career Center called Designing Your Life. And this was actually adopted from Stanford University, where we utilize design thinking, which is a method for solving problems. And we use that in order to build forward and create a life that is tailored and purposeful to the unique self. And it involves brainstorming, creativity, introspection, reflection, zooming in, truly with an emphasis though on what's bubbling underneath the surface when it comes to you, your energy, your excitement, your interests. So whether you've got a solid idea, on the path that you want to go down or not, we have fantastic resources to guide you along. So don't wait. I tell the story of a student that I, was really excited. He was really excited about going into corporate finance. We worked together for 2 semesters, and he had not had any practical hands-on experience in corporate finance. It had really just been from his family and kind of YouTube videos and his classes. And so I kept gently nudging and encouraging him to apply for an internship or get a shadowing gig or something like that. And so finally in his last semester, he got a 6-week internship with a corporate finance firm. And guess what? He hated it. So thankfully there, is a happy ending, but I tell you this story as an example of, one, how fast time flies in school. And, 2, but what might happen if you don't work into your passion and you're really truly relying on what you think versus, what something might actually feel like. So I will put my email in the chat or maybe have Emily kind of disperse a bit to the group. But if anyone would like to connect further, even if it's just to check out some of the tools that we have or this Designing Your Life appointment curriculum around exploration, please don't hesitate to connect with me. You alternatively can make an appointment with me via Starfish. So I can babble on about all this stuff for forever. As you can tell, it gets me really excited, but I don't want to hog our airtime. As I know, Bailey's got some amazing insight and experience to share with you, but I really look forward to working with you all throughout our resume event on November 3rd and onward in your academic and professional careers. So it's been a pleasure, and I really just appreciate the opportunity to speak with you all and to sit in on this amazing, amazing event. So Bailey, I'm going to pass it over to you.
Thanks, Bree. Yes, and please let us know if you have questions for either of us. We're so excited to be here. And it's just awesome to be, you know, on a call full of amazing women and men who have these goals in mind. And like Bree said, when Emily brought this up, I was like, yes, 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 yes. So it's awesome to be here. A little bit about me. So my name is Bailey Ashita. Again, I'm one of the career coaches. I work more kind of on the technical side of things. So that's like resumes, cover letters, mock interviews, job searching, internship searching, all of that good stuff. I had a presentation planned, but it was super specific, kind of basic, like resumes, like getting started. So, you know, we can always chat about that. Feel free to just make an appointment with me and it'll be really specific on, you know, maybe the jobs you're looking for, or maybe just starting your resume. But I will leave y'all today with just a couple of tips. So I would say number one, networking. And this is exactly what this event is for, is networking and talking to the professionals that are actually doing those positions that you're interested in. Because you can talk to me all day about working in the FBI, but I have never worked in the FBI. So I cannot give you as specific advice as others could. So that's just an example. But I do want to give a quick story about networking that really just led me to this position that I never even expected. And actually it was probably almost exactly a year ago that this happened. So I have been working in higher education for almost 6 years, and it's weird to think about. It's not that long, but at the same time, like in the span of my life, it feels like it has. But I moved to Colorado Springs last July. I started the master's program in higher education. And when I first came here, I was working with Pikes Peak Community College, but also as a graduate assistant for the student affairs program. And there was an in-person event, crazy enough, last year, a tabling event. It was super quiet. There was like one student that showed up, but a very important person was there, and that was Danny Pape, and he's the director of our career center. And within my program, I am required to do a practicum, which is like an internship. Practicum is basically another word for that. And I had been looking around thinking, you know, maybe I want to do advising or the career center. But Danny was there and I was like, well, I might as well just go over and talk to him. So I introduced myself. I said, you know, explained kind of where I'm coming from, what I'm currently doing, talked about, you know, being interested in that internship opportunity. And, you know, if any of you know Danny or will meet Danny in the future, you'll know that he is just this bubbly, amazing person that will totally have you sucked into the amazing world that is career and all the opportunities that you have. And we chatted for a lot longer than I expected, but I actually left that day with the internship. I started training the next month, and then a couple months later, this full-time position opened up. And my first reaction was actually to not apply, which is weird for me. And it wasn't necessarily that I maybe wasn't qualified, but also I didn't think the timing exactly matched up. I had it set in my mind that I wanted to work at Pikes Peak Community College for at least a year, so they didn't think I jumped around in jobs. And I had kind of an unofficial contract with this graduate assistant position, didn't want to, you know, leave anyone behind, anything like that. So that's what I decided, was not to apply. And, you know, I called my dad. I was like, yeah, I'm not going to apply. And the next day I called my dad right back. I said, okay, I'm going to apply. And my advice there is really, you know, if there's an opportunity, jump on it. You know, it doesn't hurt to interview. It's great practice. And, you know, you can actually take time to think about, you know, maybe if you get the offer, you can decide if you want to take it or not. So really just jump at those opportunities. And I did. And I got the position and I started on March 1st, and it was just an absolute whirlwind. But this is where I think a lot of us have been talking about, you know, things that kind of came our way that we didn't expect and that we didn't plan. And a lot of times those can be the best opportunities. And so I think that networking piece, it's all about who you know and making that first impression. And Danny, our director, always says hire for attitude. And it's so funny because he says it so much, but it's really true. Is, you know, if you have that attitude, if you have those interpersonal skills, if you have, you know, those shared hobbies between you and the hiring committee or the hiring director, then they're going to remember you and you're going to stand out. So that's some of the best advice I could give. as far as, resumes and cover letters go, I really suggest just telling your story, being that human, because a lot of times, I'll even get questions like, why am I not getting a call back? And I say, okay, like, what's your strategy? Are you tailoring your resume like we've talked about tonight? Making sure to kind of speak in their language and using their exact wording. And sometimes I'll hear, well, I've been applying to like 50 jobs per week and I've been using the same resume, the same cover letter. So really it just goes back to those basics of, okay, your resume and your cover letter are the first impression that they're even going to be seeing of you. And so what can you do to make sure that first impression is a unique one? So sometimes what helps me is just sitting down and thinking, hey, do I think someone else will have something very similar on their resume or their cover letter? If the answer is yes, change it up a little bit. If someone says I'm great at communicating, okay, a lot of people are, a lot of the same people with the same background are going to be applying to that position. So how can you twist it in a way that really stands out? And so I think a really good way to twist it is to tell your story, because a lot of times people will, just list off all the skills that they have, but not really explain like where they got it or how they continue to use it, or maybe how they would plan to use it in that position. So really kind of giving that context and that background as to why you're qualified for that position is good advice. And your resume, your cover letter, the interview, all of these pieces of the process, they're meant to complement each other. So resumes, they stress me out because, these bullet points do not define me. I am a lot more than just a piece of paper. So that cover letter, this is where I started actually enjoying cover letters, is because it lets me add that context to those bullet points. It says, yes, I did these things, but here's kind of the story behind it. Here's why I got interested in the field. Here's why I'm interested in this specific company. And that's why I recommend tailor your resume, tailor your cover letter. It sounds like a lot of work, but make sure to have a unique resume and cover letter for each position that you apply for. Yes, it's a lot of work, but also, if you're narrowing down your priorities, figuring out exactly the positions that you're wanting to apply for, maybe instead of applying for like 50 jobs per week, maybe narrow it down to like 5 per week-ish and really hone in on those and hopefully you'll get some more callbacks. I feel like this is kind of just a brain dump of information, but does anyone have like general questions about even starting a resume or a cover letter, or any questions for a working professional and that I'm a woman? Anything like that? Same thing for Bree or the others still on the call tonight. And that's okay if not too. Oh, Robin, were you going to say something?
So I would like, I don't have a question, but I would like you and Bree to tell us how students could connect with you on the next date on November 3rd.
Yes, absolutely. So I do have a link for that. Bree, do you want to find that, or maybe we can switch as well and I can find it. So yes, November 3rd, thank you so much for bringing that up. November 3rd, we are doing a full day of resume reviews. We're really excited for it. And these are 15-minute appointments. So they're going to go quick, but really it's just a good way to get that first impression from one of us coaches. Our peer career advisors will also be helping get the first impression, what we think, but also like what are some tangible next steps for how you can make the next updates to your resume. And then of course you can always set up follow-up appointments, which usually are 30 minutes in length. But yes, that's all day. Sign up for a slot. We've got a sign up genius going, and that will be hosted on Zoom. So once you sign up, you'll be sent the direct link that you can join at that time that it says on there, and it'll be 15 minutes and you can ask away any questions or just ask for general advice on resumes.
Yeah, that sounds perfect.
We're very excited.
I'm trying to find the link and paste it in here and it's not copying through. So bear with us 1 second. Otherwise, Robin and Emily, might we be able to have you all kind of send out this flyer and the resume link itself where students are able to sign up, that we've got access to their emails?
Yep.
We're getting close.
Okay.
Oh, wait, that was the wrong copy. Hold on. Yes, and I'll put my email. This is my email in the chat. So feel free to just ask me any questions via email as well. And let's see if this will let me copy it. Okay, hopefully that worked. So feel free to copy that now, because once this call ends, you won't have access to it. But that is the sign up link. If there's any problems with it, I was working with it a lot today to try to get that to work. So hopefully that does work. But yeah, feel free to ask us any other questions besides resumes and cover letters too. If you have any questions about what it's like to be both a woman and a professional at the same time, I'm more than happy to chat with you about my story and ask questions about yours too.
Thank you. I think this has been just an incredible night and all this talent, and I want to thank everybody for participating. We really look forward to the third. I think students are going to really flock to that, and I appreciate you agreeing to do that with us. And Emily, Emily's the president of WPS. Would you like to say any last words?
Yeah, just thank you all again for taking the time out of your evening to attend this event and speak to it. It really means a lot to all of us and those who have attended as well. So thank you again for attending and speaking these awesome insight. I feel like I learned a lot, especially because I'm in the middle of the job process. So I think it helps a lot to even just for myself to learn about this too. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Well, I think thank you. And I think we should call it a night. And once again, thanks. And thanks for all the participants. And I'll have the recording ready to send out to anybody who would like it.
Great. Thank you all.
Good night.
Bye, everybody. Good night.